The alarm screamed through the mining colony's control center. Administrator Zeph High pressed his six-fingered hands against the communication console, his blue skin turning pale with fear. Through the tall windows of the command tower, he could see the sky burning. Dark shapes moved between the stars. They were massive organic things that pulsed like giant hearts. The Ravager swarm had found Kepler 442b. "All defensive systems are failing," reported his assistant, her voice shaking. The orbital platforms lasted only 20 minutes. Zeph High had heard stories about the Ravagers. Every species in the galaxy knew the tales. They were creatures that ate entire worlds. They turned planets into empty husks, leaving nothing behind but dust and bones. No one had ever defeated them in battle. The best anyone could do was run away and hope they didn't follow. "How long until the Confederation fleet arrives?" he asked. 3 weeks, sir. Maybe more. 3 weeks. The colony would be dead in 3 days. The automated defense guns were already melting under the Ravagers' acid spit. The shield generators sparked and died one by one. Soon the creatures would land and begin their feast. Zeph High looked at the families running through the streets below. Children cried as their parents carried them toward the emergency shelters. But the shelters wouldn't help. Nothing would help. The Ravagers always won. He opened the emergency communication system. Maybe someone else was out there. Maybe a trading ship or a research vessel could help evacuate some people. It was a desperate hope, but hope was all they had left. "This is Administrator Zeph High of Mining Colony 7 on Kepler 442b. He spoke into the transmitter. "We are under attack by Ravager forces. All defensive systems have failed. We need immediate assistance. Anyone who receives this message, please help us." The signal shot out into space at light speed, carrying his words to anyone who might be listening. Far away, on a small blue planet called Earth, the message arrived at a large dish antenna in the desert. The human operators had been tracking signals from space for only 2 years. Their species was new to space travel, barely able to reach other star systems. Lieutenant Sarah Chen sat in the communications center of the UES Indomitable, humanity's first real warship built for deep space. She was drinking coffee and reading reports when the distress call came through the speakers. The voice spoke in the common galactic language, which humans had learned during their first contact with alien traders. Chen listened carefully as the alien begged for help against something called the Ravager swarm. "Captain Morrison to the bridge," she announced over the ship's communication system. Captain Morrison arrived quickly. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. The weight of commanding humanity's first military ship in alien space wore on him constantly. "What do we have, Lieutenant?" "Distress call, sir. A mining colony under attack by something called the Ravager swarm. They say all defenses have failed." Morrison frowned. "Ravager swarm? Check our alien species database." Chen's fingers moved over her computer. Information appeared on the screen. Her face went pale as she read. "Sir, according to our files, the Ravager swarm is a hive-minded species that consumes entire planets. No one in galactic history has ever defeated them in open combat. Every encounter ends the same way: total destruction of the defending forces." Morrison studied the information. Humanity had been warned to avoid certain areas of space when they first made contact with alien civilizations. The Ravager territories were marked as absolute no-go zones. "How far away is this colony?" he asked. 12 hours at maximum speed, sir." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Earth's government had given him clear orders: avoid conflicts with unknown alien species. Humanity was too new, too weak to get involved in galactic wars. Their job was to explore, trade, and learn. But children were dying on that colony. Families were about to be torn apart by monsters from space. "Sir?" Chen waited for orders. Morrison made the decision that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "Set course for Kepler 442b. Maximum speed." "Sir, we don't have any alliance with these people. Command specifically said to avoid conflicts." "Command isn't here, Lieutenant." "I am." Morrison's voice was hard as steel. "Send a message to the colony. Tell them help is coming." Chen hesitated. "Sir, the database says no one has ever survived fighting these Ravagers. Our ship isn't designed for this kind of battle." Morrison looked at her with steady eyes. "Maybe no one has fought them the right way yet." The Indomitable changed course. Its engines burned bright blue as the ship accelerated toward the distant colony. In the ship's armory, human Marines checked their weapons and armor. They didn't know what they were about to face, but they knew people needed help. Back on Kepler 442b, Zeph High received an impossible message. Someone had answered his call. A ship called the Indomitable was coming to help. But when he looked up their species in the galactic database, his hope faded. Humans. A primitive species that had barely learned to travel between stars. Their planet was listed as a high-gravity death world with dangerous weather and toxic atmosphere. Host civilized species avoided them. What could one primitive ship do against the Ravager swarm? Outside his window, more dark shapes appeared in the sky. The Ravagers were landing. Massive creatures the size of buildings crawled out of their bioships. They had too many teeth and eyes that glowed red in the darkness. Their claws could tear through metal like paper. "Sir," his assistant called out. "The outer settlements have gone silent." Zeph High closed his eyes. The feast had begun. Soon the Ravagers would reach the main colony. Soon everyone would be dead. But somewhere in space, a human ship raced toward them at maximum speed. The crew didn't know they were flying toward certain death. They only knew that someone needed help, and that was enough. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the stars stream past. His ship carried 300 human souls toward a battle no one had ever won. The smart thing would be to turn around. The safe thing would be to leave this problem to someone else. But Morrison had read the human history books. He knew about soldiers who held bridges against impossible odds. He knew about pilots who flew into enemy fire to save their friends. He knew about ordinary people who did extraordinary things when others needed help. Humanity might be new to space. They might be primitive compared to the great galactic civilizations. But they understood something that many advanced species had forgotten. Sometimes you fight not because you can win, but because it's the right thing to do. The Indomitable flew through the darkness toward Kepler 442b, carrying Earth's first warriors into galactic legend. The Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace into hell. Captain Morrison stared at the main screen, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. The space around Kepler 442b was filled with nightmare creatures. Massive bioships floated like poisonous jellyfish, their surfaces pulsing with veins and strange lights. Some were as large as city blocks, others the size of skyscrapers. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Chen. The planet's orbital defense platforms were twisted metal and flame. Debris from destroyed ships drifted in slow, silent clouds. On the planet's surface, red fires burned where cities used to be. "Sir, we're receiving multiple signals from the colony," Chen reported. "They're begging us to leave. They say it's too late." Morrison watched a Ravager bioship slowly digest the remains of a space station. The creature's mouth was larger than a football field, lined with teeth that dripped acid. Inside, he could see the twisted remains of metal and machinery being dissolved. "How many Ravager ships?" he asked. 57 confirmed, sir. Possibly more behind the planet. And we have one ship." "Yes, sir." Morrison should have ordered a retreat. Any sane commander would have jumped back to hyperspace and reported the colony as lost. The smart play was to save his ship and crew for battles they could actually win. Instead, he pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage a superior enemy force in defense of civilian populations. The odds are not in our favor. Anyone who wishes to object may do so now." Silence filled the communication channel. Then from the Marine barracks came a voice. "Sir, this is Sergeant Major Vasquez. The Marines would like to know when we can start shooting these ugly bastards." Laughter echoed through the ship. Morrison smiled for the first time in hours. "Battle stations. All weapons online. Marines to drop pods. Let's show these things how humans fight." The Indomitable charged into the swarm. Aboard the largest Ravager bioship, the Swarm Queen felt confusion. New prey had arrived, but instead of fleeing, it was attacking. This had never happened before. In 1,000 conquered worlds, every species had tried to run. The human ship was small and weak. The Queen could crush it easily, but something about its approach felt wrong. The prey was moving too fast, turning too quickly. It wasn't afraid. "Target the nearest bioship," Morrison ordered. Full power to forward weapons. The Indomitable's main guns opened fire. Streams of superheated plasma and kinetic rounds slammed into a Ravager cruiser. The creature's bioarmor, evolved to resist energy weapons, shattered under the impact of solid metal moving at incredible speed. Direct hit. "Enemy ship is bleeding atmosphere." The Ravager cruiser writhed in pain and fury. Green blood sprayed from its wounds. It had never been hurt like this before. The prey was using primitive kinetic weapons. metal bullets and explosive shells. Such weapons had been abandoned by civilized species millions of years ago. But against bioarmor designed to absorb energy, kinetic weapons were devastatingly effective. "Launching drop pods," announced Lieutenant Rodriguez from the tactical station. 6 pods shot from the Indomitable's belly, racing toward the wounded Ravager ship. Inside each pod, 10 human Marines waited in powered armor, carrying weapons that would have seemed primitive to any galactic civilization: assault rifles, shotguns, rocket launchers, grenades, tools of war that humans had, perfected over centuries of fighting each other. Sergeant Major Elena Vasquez led the first boarding party. Her powered armor was scratched and dented from previous battles on alien worlds. She carried an assault rifle that fired depleted uranium rounds and a plasma sword that could cut through steel. "Remember," she told her Marines as their pod approached the Ravager ship, "these things have never fought anything that fights back. Let's give them an education." The pod punched through the bioship's outer membrane with a sound like tearing fabric. The Marines jumped out into a corridor that pulsed like the inside of a living throat. The air was thick with moisture and smelled like decay. "Hostile atmosphere," reported Corporal Jackson. "Switching to internal air supply." Vasquez nodded. Her armor's sensors showed movement ahead. Something big was coming toward them. The first Ravager warrior appeared around a bend in the corridor. It was 12 feet tall, with 4 arms and a mouth full of needle teeth. Its claws could tear through metal, and its hide was thick enough to stop energy weapons. It had never seen anything like the small figures in metal shells that faced it. Vasquez opened fire. Her rifle spat armor-piercing rounds at 3,000 feet per second. The bullets punched through the creature's bioarmor like paper. Green blood sprayed across the walls. The Ravager fell, confusion in its dying eyes. "Move up," Vasquez shouted. "Secure the corridor!" Her Marines advanced through the bioship, their weapons cutting down anything that moved. The Ravagers had no tactics for fighting inside their own ships. They were used to consuming helpless prey, not battling determined soldiers. On the Indomitable's bridge, Morrison watched his ship dance between the massive bioships. The Ravagers were trying to surround him, but they moved like giant whales, slow and predictable. His ship was built for speed and maneuverability. "Sir, we're getting reports from the colony," Chen announced. "They say our Marines are actually winning inside that Ravager ship." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "Of course they are. Marines don't know how to lose." Down on the planet's surface, Administrator Zephi watched his displays in amazement. The impossible was happening. The primitive human ship was not only surviving against the Ravager swarm, it was winning. "Sir, the humans are using kinetic weapons," reported his tactical officer. "Bullets and explosives. The Ravager's bioarmor can't adapt fast enough." Zephi stared at the tactical display. The human ship moved like a dancer, never staying still long enough for the Ravagers to target effectively. And their Marines were actually inside a Ravager bioship, fighting hand-to-hand with creatures that had never been challenged. "Update from the Marine assault team," came Vasquez's voice over the radio. "We've reached the bioship's brain chamber. Planting charges now." "You're inside the creature's brain?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir. Ugly place. Really smells bad." Explosions rocked the Ravager bioship. It convulsed like a dying animal, then went still. The first Ravager vessel in galactic history had been killed in combat. The other bioships hesitated. This had never happened before. The small prey had hurt them. The small prey had killed one of their own. Fear was a new emotion for the Ravager swarm. "Sir," Chen reported, excitement in her voice, "the enemy ships are backing away. I think they're confused." Morrison watched the massive creatures retreat to regroup. They had expected easy prey and found dangerous predators instead. "All Marines return to ship," he ordered. "Prepare for the next wave." As the drop pods returned to the Indomitable, Sergeant Major Vasquez removed her helmet and shook out her black hair. Her face was covered in sweat and green alien blood. "How'd we do, Sergeant Major?" Morrison asked over the radio. "1 bioship down, sir. 56 to go." Morrison laughed. "Those are pretty good odds for Marines." "Yes, sir. We're just getting started." The Ravager swarm had never encountered anything like humanity. They were about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world, and why its inhabitants were the most dangerous species they had ever faced. The Ravager swarm queen was ancient. She had consumed 1,000 worlds and devoured billions of creatures. Nothing had ever challenged her supremacy. Nothing had ever hurt her children. Until now. The Queen's massive bioship hung in space like a diseased moon. It was 10 times larger than any other vessel in the swarm, covered in armor that had grown thick over millions of years. Inside its depths, the Queen's mind controlled every Ravager in the system through telepathic commands. She was trying to understand what had gone wrong. The prey species called humans had destroyed 3 of her bioships. Their small vessel danced between her forces, striking with weapons that shouldn't have been effective. Their warriors fought inside her children's bodies, killing them from within. This was not how feeding was supposed to work. New orders, the Queen commanded telepathically. All vessels converge on the human ship. Crush it with overwhelming force. 50 remaining bioships began moving toward the Indomitable. Their formation blocked out the stars. On the human ship, Captain Morrison watched the enemy forces gather. His vessel had taken damage from the running battle. Hull breaches had been sealed, but his ammunition was running low. His crew was exhausted. "Sir," Lieutenant Chen reported, "enemy ships are forming a sphere around us. They're cutting off all escape routes." Morrison studied the tactical display. The Ravagers were learning. Instead of attacking individually, they were coordinating their assault. Soon his ship would be trapped in the center of their formation. Status on the Marines? Sergeant Major Vasquez's team just finished planting charges on bioship number 4. It should go down in 30 seconds. An explosion lit up space as another Ravager vessel died. But it wasn't enough. For every ship they destroyed, 10 more closed in. "Sir," Chen said quietly, "we should consider retreat. We've done what we can." Morrison looked at the planet below. Fires still burned on the surface where the Ravagers had landed. But in some areas the fires were going out. The colony's people were hiding in their shelters hoping for rescue. Negative. "We're not leaving." "Sir, we can't win against 50 ships." Morrison smiled grimly. "Then we'd better figure out how to make it 49. In the Marine barracks, Sergeant Major Vasquez was checking her equipment. Her powered armor was dented and scorched from fighting inside alien bioships. Her assault rifle was nearly empty, and her plasma sword had a crack in its energy matrix. She didn't care. Marines had fought with worse equipment in harder places. "Listen up," she called to her team. "The captain wants us to take out the big one." Corporal Jackson looked at the tactical display showing the Queen's massive bioship. "Sarge, that thing is the size of a city. Then we'd better bring a big bomb." Vasquez pulled up the ship's weapons inventory on her computer. Standard explosives wouldn't be enough to kill something that large. But the Indomitable carried one experimental weapon, a prototype fusion charge designed for mining operations. "Rodriguez, can you rig this fusion charge for remote detonation?" Lieutenant Rodriguez examined the device. It was about the size of a briefcase and contained enough energy to level a mountain. "Yes, ma'am. But someone would have to carry it into the target and plant it manually. The bioship's defenses would destroy any unmanned delivery system. How close would they have to get?" "The neural center. The creature's brain. Otherwise the charge won't kill it completely." Vasquez nodded. The Queen's bioship was enormous, heavily defended, and filled with warrior creatures. Getting to its brain would require fighting through miles of hostile territory. It would be a suicide mission. "I'll take a volunteer team," she announced. Every Marine in the room stepped forward. "Sergeant Major." Morrison's voice came over the radio. "The Ravagers are closing in. Whatever you're planning, now would be good." Vasquez selected her best fighters: Jackson, Murphy, Williams, and Chen. 5 Marines against a bioship the size of Manhattan. "Drop pods launching in 60 seconds, she reported. "If we don't make it back, tell my sister I died doing something stupid." Morrison's voice was tight with emotion. "Negative, Sergeant Major, you're coming back." "That's an order." "Copy that, sir. We'll try to follow orders." The drop pod shot from the Indomitable like a bullet racing toward the Queen's massive bioship. Inside, the 5 Marines checked their weapons one final time. "Remember," Vasquez said, "we're not trying to kill everything in there. We just need to reach the brain and plant the charge. Speed over firepower." The pod punched through the bioship's outer membrane and kept going, drilling deep into the creature's body. It finally stopped in what looked like a vast cavern made of flesh and bone. "Hostile atmosphere confirmed," Jackson reported. "Lots of acid in the air. Sealing suits." They stepped out into a nightmare. The walls pulsed with veins and arteries. Strange lights blinked in the distance. The floor was soft and warm, like walking on skin. "Motion sensors show movement all around us," Williams whispered. Big movement. The first Ravager warriors appeared from the shadows. These were different from the ones they'd fought before. Larger, faster, with better armor. The Queen's personal guard. Light them up, Vasquez shouted. The corridor exploded into gunfire. The Marines' weapons spat depleted uranium rounds and high-explosive shells. The Ravager warriors screamed and charged, their claws sparking against metal armor. Jackson's rifle jammed. A warrior's claw raked across his chest, tearing through his armor. He drew his sidearm and put 3 bullets into the creature's head at point-blank range. Keep moving, Vasquez yelled over the noise. The brain is this way. They fought through corridor after corridor, leaving dead aliens in their wake. The bioship's immune system began responding, sending acid-spitting organisms to stop the invaders. The Marine's armor hissed as the acid ate through the outer layers. Murphy fell when a warrior's claw found a gap in his armor. Williams stayed to cover him while the others pressed on. 2 Marines down, Vasquez reported to the ship. Still advancing, her armor's display showed they were getting close to the neural center. The biological readings were off the charts. They were approaching something massive and intelligent. Chen's suit lost power. She continued in emergency backup mode, knowing she had only minutes of air left. Finally, they reached a vast chamber. In the center hung the Queen's brain, a pulsing mass of tissue the size of a building, covered in nerve clusters and thought networks. The Queen's telepathic voice echoed in their minds. You cannot destroy me, little creatures. I am eternal. I am perfect. Vasquez smiled inside her helmet. Lady, you've never met the human race. She activated the fusion charge and placed it against the brain's primary nerve cluster. The timer showed 60 seconds. Charge is set, she radioed. Extraction needed now. Negative, Sergeant Major. Morrison's voice crackled back. No time for pickup. The Ravagers are about to overrun us. Vasquez looked at Jackson and Chen. They were trapped inside a dying bioship with no way out. The fusion charge would vaporize everything within a mile radius. Understood, sir. Tell my sister I kept my promise. Sergeant Major, it's been an honor serving with you, Captain. The timer reached 10 seconds. Vasquez grabbed her teammates' hands. See you on the other side, Marines. The fusion charge detonated. The Queen's bioship convulsed like a dying whale. Light erupted from its surface as the massive creature's brain was destroyed. Its telepathic control over the swarm vanished instantly. Across the battlefield, Ravager bioships suddenly stopped moving. Without the Queen's coordinating intelligence, they became confused and directionless. Some began attacking each other. Others fled in random directions. Captain Morrison watched the enemy formation collapse. All weapons target the confused vessels. Don't let them regroup. The Indomitable swept through the scattered Ravagers, its guns destroying one bioship after another. Without coordination, the mighty swarm became easy prey. On the planet's surface, Administrator Zeph-Hai stared at his displays in amazement. The impossible had happened. The Ravager swarm was retreating. The humans had won, sir, his tactical officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the human ship. Morrison's voice filled the command center. This is Captain Morrison of the UES Indomitable. The Ravager threat has been neutralized. Your colony is safe. Zeph-Hai felt tears in his eyes. Captain Morrison, we owe you everything. How many of your people survived? There was a long pause. We lost 5 Marines in the final assault, Administrator. They died to save your people. What were their names? We will build a monument, another pause. Sergeant Major Elena Vasquez, Corporals Jackson, Murphy, Williams, and Chen. They were the best humanity had to offer. Zeph-Hai looked out at his saved colony. In the sky, the last Ravager bioships were jumping to hyperspace, fleeing the system they had expected to consume. 5 humans had died to save millions of aliens they had never met. It was the galaxy's first lesson in what humanity truly was. The news traveled across the galaxy at light speed. For the first time in recorded history, someone had defeated a Ravager swarm in open combat. The impossible victory at Kepler 442b sent shockwaves through every civilization in known space. Dr. Zenthara, of the Galactic Research Institute, received the battle reports 3 days after the fight ended. Her 4 eyes scanned the data repeatedly, convinced there had been some mistake. This cannot be accurate, she muttered to her assistant. The humans destroyed 57 Ravager bioships with a single vessel? The recordings are confirmed authentic, Doctor. Multiple alien witnesses from the colony verified the events. Dr. Zenthara was the galaxy's leading expert on combat biology. She had studied every major species and their fighting capabilities. The idea that a primitive species could accomplish what the greatest military powers had never achieved seemed impossible. Bring me everything we know about this species called humans. The data files were surprisingly thin. Humanity had made first contact only 2 years ago. They were classified as a young spacefaring species from a planet called Earth. Most diplomatic encounters described them as friendly, but unremarkable. Computer, display the planetary classification for Earth. The display showed a blue and green world with unusual characteristics. Dr. Zenthara's eyes widened as she read the details. Class 12 Deathworld, she whispered. How is that possible? Deathworlds were planets so hostile that life shouldn't be able to evolve there. Class 12 was nearly the highest rating possible. The gravity alone would crush most galactic species. Computer analyzed the atmospheric composition of Earth. The results made her feel sick. 21% oxygen, a concentration so high it would be poisonous to most civilized races. The atmospheric pressure would burst the lungs of delicate species like her own. The temperature variations would kill anyone not protected by advanced technology. Assistant, contact the Galactic Council immediately. We need to reclassify humanity. While Dr. Zenthara studied the impossible victory, word of the battle spread through diplomatic channels. In the elegant halls of the Altarian Assembly, gentle beings who had never known violence listened to recordings of human Marines fighting inside Ravager bioships. Ambassador Veltar played the audio for the emergency session. The sounds of gunfire and explosions echoed through the chamber. These creatures called humans fight with kinetic weapons, he explained to the horrified assembly. Metal projectiles fired at extreme velocity. They board enemy vessels and engage in close combat with predators. One assembly member fainted. Others covered their ears to block out the sounds of battle. They seemed to enjoy the fighting, Veltar continued. Listen to this recording from their ship's communications. Sergeant Major Vasquez's voice filled the chamber. Light them up. Keep moving. These ugly bastards picked the wrong species to mess with. The assembly members looked at each other in shock. The humans sounded excited during combat. They were actually having fun while fighting monsters. Ambassador, asked the assembly leader, her voice shaking. Are these humans a threat to peaceful species? Unknown. They claim they only came to help, but any species capable of defeating Ravagers. He left the sentence unfinished. In the crystal cities of Zentari Prime, the ruling council debated humanity's implications for galactic civilization. The Zentari were scientists and philosophers who had eliminated violence from their society millions of years ago. Their tactics make no sense, declared Chief Scientist Rodden. They attack superior forces without hesitation. They sacrifice themselves for strangers. They use primitive weapons against advanced biotechnology. Perhaps, suggested another council member, their primitiveness is actually an advantage. The Ravagers evolved to counter our advanced weapons. They never encountered anything like human kinetic firearms. Rodden studied the combat footage again. The humans moved differently than other species. They were faster, stronger, more aggressive. Their soldiers actually seemed to get more dangerous when wounded. Computer, analyze human physiology based on available data. The results shocked him. Humans had bone density 3 times greater than most species. Their muscle fibers were designed for explosive power rather than efficiency. Their nervous systems processed combat situations faster than most military computers. They're not just from a death world, he realized. They're apex predators from a death world. On the homeworld of the Confederation's military commanders, General Thexnon studied the battle reports with professional interest. As one of the few species that still maintained armed forces, he understood warfare better than most. Their tactics are crude but effective, he told his staff. No coordination with orbital support. No advanced battle computers. They simply attacked the strongest enemy and kept fighting until it died. General, asked his aide, should we be concerned about human military capabilities? Thexnon watched footage of human Marines boarding a Ravager bioship. The creatures inside that vessel were each the size of a ground vehicle, armed with claws that could cut through metal. The humans attacked them with handheld weapons, and won. We should be terrified, he said quietly. Dr. Zenthara finally finished her analysis. The report she prepared would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. She stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, her data displayed on massive screens behind her. Honored counselors, I have completed my study of the humans and their victory over the Ravager swarm. My findings are disturbing. The council chamber held representatives from 47 different species. All of them had come to hear about the impossible victory. Humans evolved on what we classify as a Class 12 death world. The gravity is crushing, the atmosphere is toxic, and the climate variations would kill most of us within hours. But that's not the most important factor. She activated a holographic display showing various Earth creatures. Earth is unique in galactic history. It is the only known planet where large predators and prey species evolve together in constant conflict. Most worlds develop either predators or prey, but rarely both at the same level. The display showed lions hunting zebras, sharks attacking seals, eagles swooping down on small mammals. Humans are the result of millions of years of evolutionary pressure from the most dangerous predators their world could produce. They developed endurance hunting, literally running their prey to death over vast distances. They learned to work in groups to bring down creatures much larger than themselves. A counselor from the peaceful Mirian system raised a tentacle. Doctor, are you saying humans are naturally violent? I'm saying they're naturally survivors. Violence is just one tool in their arsenal. But look at their military technology. The display changed to show human weapons, assault rifles, grenades, armored vehicles. Every other species in the galaxy developed energy weapons and defensive systems. Humans perfected kinetic weapons, tools designed to physically destroy their targets. Their entire military doctrine is based on aggressive assault rather than defensive positioning. This explains why they defeated the Ravagers, said another counselor. The bioships were evolved to resist energy weapons. Correct. But there's more. Dr. Zenthara activated another display. Humans have something we call stress response enhancement. When faced with danger, their bodies actually become stronger and faster. Most species become weaker under stress. The council murmured in amazement. Furthermore, they seem to form emotional bonds with other species. The human ship came to Kepler 442b to help complete strangers, knowing they might die in the attempt. This is unprecedented behavior. Are they a threat to galactic civilization? Asked the council leader. Dr. Zenthara considered the question carefully. That depends on how we treat them. The humans who saved Kepler 4482b were responding to a distress call. They didn't demand payment or territory. They simply helped because it was needed. And if we were to threaten them? She thought about the footage of Marines fighting inside bioships, of Captain Morrison charging into a battle he couldn't win, of Sergeant Major Vasquez dying to save aliens she'd never met. Counselor, I recommend we never find out. These creatures have spent millions of years learning to kill things that are bigger, stronger, and more numerous than they are. They're very, very good at it. The Council voted unanimously to invite humanity into the Galactic Confederation, not as junior members but as equals. They also voted to establish humanity as the first guardian species in galactic history. Some threats were too dangerous for civilized species to handle alone. But the galaxy had found its protectors. The only question now was whether the rest of the universe was ready for what Earth had to offer. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, the galaxy had changed forever. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, humanity's newest and largest warship. Through the massive viewports, she could see the joint fleet assembling around her. Human vessels, flying alongside ships from dozens of alien civilizations. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just 1 year ago. Admiral, Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communication station. We're receiving the final status reports from all fleet elements. Chen nodded. The Joint Human Confederation Defense Force was preparing for its first major operation. Another distress call had come from the Rigel system, where a new threat had emerged. How many ships do we have total? 47 vessels, ma'am. 12 human warships and 35 Confederation support vessels. Chen smiled. The aliens were learning to work with humanity's aggressive tactics, while humans were adapting to coordinate with species who had very different ideas about warfare. The integration hadn't been easy. Dr. Zenthara entered the bridge, carrying a datapad filled with her latest research. As the galaxy's expert on human combat biology, she had become the unofficial liaison between Earth's military and the Confederation's scientific community. Admiral Chen, I have the briefing on our new enemy. What are we facing this time, Doctor? Synthara activated the bridge's main display. It showed a crystalline structure floating in space, beautiful and deadly. They call themselves the hegemony, silicon-based life forms that convert organic matter into crystal matrices. They're not trying to eat planets like the Ravagers, they're trying to transform them. How many ships? Unknown. Their vessels are grown rather than built, and they can create new ones from raw materials. Intelligence suggests they may have hundreds of units. Chen studied the display. The hegemony ships looked like floating cathedrals made of living crystal. They were beautiful in an alien way. What's their combat capability? Energy weapons that can turn living tissue to crystal instantly. Force fields that redirect kinetic attacks. They've already converted 3 colony worlds. Admiral Chen frowned. Energy weapons and force fields were exactly the kind of advanced technology that had made other species overconfident. The hegemony sounded like they had learned from the Ravagers' defeat. Any weaknesses? Their crystal structure makes them vulnerable to sonic weapons and electromagnetic pulses. But they adapt quickly to new threats. Chen activated the fleet communication system. All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. We're facing an enemy that has studied our tactics and prepared countermeasures. They think they know how humans fight. She paused, looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien ships. They're about to learn that the first rule of fighting humans is that we don't follow rules. On the Altarian science vessel Peaceful Endeavor, Captain Zeph-Hai listened to the human admiral's briefing. The gentle administrator who had once begged for help at Kepler 442b was now a ship captain, having volunteered to serve alongside the humans who had saved his people. Captain, his tactical officer reported, the human vessels are moving into attack formation. Zeph-Hai watched the human ships spread out in what looked like a chaotic pattern. After months of working with them, he had learned that human tactics often appeared random until the moment they struck. Signal all Confederation vessels to follow Admiral Chen's lead. And remind everyone, stay clear of human firing lanes. The mixed fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying representatives of dozens of species toward their first battle as unified forces. They emerged in the Rigel system to find a scene of crystalline horror. The planets glowed with unnatural light as their surfaces were slowly converted to living crystal. Hegemony ships moved in perfect geometric formations, their weapons turning asteroids and space debris into more crystal structures. Contact, Lieutenant Rodriguez announced. The hegemony fleet is turning toward us. Estimated 120 vessels. Numbers don't matter, Chen replied calmly. What matters is who's driving the ships. The hegemony commander was ancient and logical. Its crystalline mind processed thousands of variables as it analyzed the approaching enemy fleet. The files on human tactics were extensive. Chaotic attacks, primitive weapons, boarding actions against superior forces. All of these factors had been accounted for in hegemony ship design. Energy weapons would be ineffective against their crystal hulls. Kinetic weapons would be deflected by gravitic shields. Boarding actions were impossible when the ships themselves were made of living crystal. The humans would be defeated using their own aggressive tactics against them. Initiate conversion protocol, the commander ordered. Transform the organic vessels first. Beams of crystalline energy shot from the hegemony ships, designed to turn the human vessels into crystal statues. But the beam struck empty space. The human ships had scattered like leaves in a hurricane. Target acquisition lost, reported a hegemony tactical node. Human vessels are moving in unpredictable patterns. The commander watched the enemy fleet break apart into small groups, each moving independently. This was not the coordinated assault the humans had used against the Ravagers. Adjust targeting algorithms for multiple small targets. But before the hegemony could adapt, the human ships struck. Not with energy weapons or kinetic guns, but with something the crystalline beings had never encountered before. Sonic torpedoes. Admiral Chen had remembered Dr. Zenthera's briefing about sonic weapons. If the hegemony was vulnerable to sound waves, humanity would give them more noise than they could handle. The torpedoes exploded in brilliant flashes of pure sound. Sonic waves tore through the crystal ships, shattering their perfect geometric structures. Hegemony vessels that had seemed invincible moments before began breaking apart like glass in an earthquake. All human vessels, switch to electromagnetic pulse weapons, Chen ordered. Let's scramble their systems. The human ships opened fire with EMP cannons, weapons that had been designed for disabling enemy electronics. The electromagnetic pulses disrupted the hegemony's crystalline neural networks, leaving their ships blind and helpless. Captain Zeph-High watched in amazement as the mighty hegemony fleet fell apart under the human assault. The crystalline beings had prepared for every tactic in the galactic military database, but they hadn't prepared for humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt faster than anyone else. "Admiral Chen," he radioed. "The hegemony ships are trying to retreat." "Negative. We finish this here and now. All ships pursue and destroy. Don't let them regroup." The mixed fleet swept through the scattered hegemony forces like a pack of wolves hunting crystal sheep. Human ships delivered the killing blows while Confederation vessels provided support and rescued any survivors. In 2 hours, it was over. The hegemony fleet was destroyed. Their conversion of the Rigel system stopped forever. Aboard the Defender, Admiral Chen received congratulations from fleet commanders across the galaxy. Humanity had proven that the victory at Kepler 442b was no accident. "Admiral," Dr. Zenthera said, "I'm updating my report on human combat effectiveness. How did you know to use sonic and electromagnetic weapons?" Chen smiled. "Doctor, humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We learned a long time ago that if your enemy expects you to attack one way, you attack a different way." "Is this how humans always fight?" "Unpredictably. Yes, we learned it from Earth. Our planet tried to kill us in so many different ways that we had to become adaptable or die out." 6 months later, the Galactic Confederation announced the formation of the Guardian Corps, a joint military force led by human commanders but including volunteers from every member species. The Corps established bases throughout the galaxy, ready to respond to any threat too dangerous for individual civilizations to handle. Their motto, suggested by a human marine, was simple: "When the galaxy calls for help, we answer." Admiral Chen stood in the Corps headquarters on the space station Guardian Prime, looking out at ships from 100 different worlds. Humans served alongside beings they had never imagined, united by a simple principle: protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. A new distress call came in from the Vega sector. Unknown attackers had wiped out 3 research stations. "Admiral," her aide reported, "we have another situation developing." Chen looked at the tactical display showing the threatened sector. Somewhere out there, people were dying while monsters destroyed everything they had built. "Prep the fleet," she ordered. "Time to go to work." The Guardian Corps ships began moving toward their jump points. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or rulers, but as the ones who stood between civilization and the dark things that wanted to destroy it. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Chen thought about Sergeant Major Vasquez and the Marines who had died at Kepler 442b. They had sacrificed themselves to save strangers, and their example had inspired an entire galaxy. "Admiral," the navigator called. "All ships report ready for jump." "Take us out," Chen commanded. "People need help." The fleet vanished into hyperspace, carrying Earth's children toward another impossible battle against another unbeatable enemy. In the galaxy's long history of peaceful civilizations and advanced technologies, humanity had become something unique, the species that ran toward danger instead of away from it.